This mindset shift made me dangerous and rich. Intro. What if I told you that the difference between success and failure isn't talent, luck, or even hard work? What if the real secret lies in a single psychological shift that most people will never make? A shift so profound that it doesn't just change how you think about money or success, but fundamentally alters how you move through the world. Today, I'm going to share the exact mindset transformation that separates the wealthy from the perpetually struggling. And I'll warn you up front, once you understand this concept, you won't be able to unsee it everywhere. You'll notice it in every successful person you meet, and you'll recognize its absence in everyone who complains about their circumstances. This isn't about positive thinking or manifestation. This is about rewiring your brain to operate like a predator in a world full of prey. Section 1. The victim vs. predator paradigm. Most people live their entire lives as victims, not victims of trauma or tragedy, but victims of their own psychology. They wake up each morning waiting for the world to happen to them. They check their phone for validation, scroll through social media comparing themselves to others, and spend their days reacting to circumstances rather than creating them. But there's another type of person, someone who operates from a completely different psychological framework. They don't wait for opportunities, they create them. They don't react to their environment, they shape it. These people have made a fundamental shift from victim consciousness to predator consciousness. Now, before you misunderstand me, I'm not talking about being cruel or hurting others. I'm talking about adopting the psychological characteristics of an apex predator: decisive action, unwavering focus, and the ability to see opportunities that others miss entirely. The wealthy understand something that the masses don't. They understand that the world doesn't owe them anything, and paradoxically, this realization is what sets them free. Section 2. The responsibility revelation. Here's where it gets interesting. The moment you truly accept that no one is coming to save you, something extraordinary happens in your brain. You stop looking for external solutions to internal problems. You stop waiting for permission to act. You stop making excuses for why your life isn't where you want it to be. This shift isn't comfortable. In fact, it's terrifying for most people, because taking full responsibility for your life means acknowledging that if you're broke, struggling, or unhappy, you played a role in creating those circumstances. And while that might sting initially, it's actually the most empowering realization you can have. Because if you created your current reality, that means you have the power to create a different one. The dangerous mindset I'm talking about is the willingness to bet everything on yourself. Not recklessly, but strategically. It's the understanding that your biggest risk isn't failure. Your biggest risk is playing it safe and waking up at 65 realizing you never really tried. Section 3. The psychology of calculated aggression. Wealthy people think differently about risk. While most people try to minimize risk, successful people try to understand it. They realize that the safest path is often the most dangerous one in disguise. Having a secure job feels safe, but it leaves you completely dependent on someone else's decision about your worth. Building your own wealth feels risky, but it gives you control over your destiny. This is why I call it dangerous thinking. Because once you start seeing the world this way, you can't go back to the comfortable illusions that keep most people trapped in mediocrity. You start to see that society has programmed you to be a consumer, not a creator, to be an employee, not an owner. to ask for permission, not forgiveness. The truly wealthy operate with what psychologists call an internal locus of control. They believe their actions determine their outcomes. This isn't delusion. It's a strategic way of thinking that forces you to focus on what you can influence rather than what you can't. Section 4. The Discomfort Advantage. Here's something most people will never understand. Comfort is your enemy. Not because suffering is noble, but because comfort makes you predictable. And predictable people are easily controlled, easily replaced, and easily forgotten. The mindset shift that made me dangerous was learning to love discomfort. Not the discomfort of pointless suffering, but the discomfort of growth. The discomfort of having difficult conversations. The discomfort of saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. When you become comfortable being uncomfortable, you develop what I call adaptive intelligence. You start to see patterns that others miss. You anticipate problems before they happen. You identify opportunities while they're still invisible to your competition. This is why wealthy people often seem to have an unfair advantage. It's not luck. It's pattern recognition developed through years of embracing uncertainty rather than avoiding it. Section 5. The Predator's Patience. But here's the sophisticated part that separates the truly dangerous from the merely reckless. Predators are patient. They don't chase every opportunity. They wait for the right moment, then they strike with overwhelming force. Most people do the opposite. They're reactive and impulsive when they should be patient, and hesitant and overthinking when they should be decisive. They spend money they don't have on things they don't need, then hesitate to invest in opportunities that could change their lives. The wealthy have learned to invert this pattern. They're patient with expenses and aggressive with opportunities. They think in decades, not quarters. They build assets while others accumulate liabilities. This long-term thinking is what allows them to make moves that seem irrational in the short term, but prove brilliant over time. While everyone else is optimizing for comfort today, they're optimizing for freedom tomorrow. Section 6. The Isolation Factor. Now, here's something nobody talks about. This mindset shift will isolate you. When you stop participating in victim conversations, when you stop complaining about the government or the economy or your circumstances, people will notice. Some will be inspired, but many will be threatened. You'll find yourself unable to relate to conversations about how unfair life is because you've accepted that fairness is irrelevant. You'll lose patience with people who have the same problems year after year but refuse to take action to solve them. This isolation isn't a bug, it's a feature, because success requires you to think differently than the majority, and the majority is broke, stressed, and convinced that their problems are someone else's fault. The dangerous mindset I'm describing requires you to be willing to be misunderstood, to be okay with people thinking you're crazy for starting a business, investing aggressively, or betting on yourself when conventional wisdom says to play it safe. Section 7. The Compound Effect of Dangerous Thinking. What makes this mindset truly powerful is that it compounds. Every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you take responsibility instead of making excuses, every time you see an opportunity where others see a problem, you strengthen these neural pathways. You literally rewire your brain to spot wealth-building opportunities automatically. You start to see inefficiencies in markets that others accept as permanent. You notice problems that millions of people have, but no one is solving. You develop the confidence to act on insights that would paralyze most people with analysis paralysis. This compound effect is why the rich get richer. Not because the system is rigged in their favor, but because their thinking is calibrated for wealth creation, while most people's thinking is calibrated for wealth preservation. And you cannot preserve what you never created. Closing. So here's your choice. You can continue thinking like prey, reacting to circumstances, waiting for someone to give you permission to succeed, and wondering why nothing ever changes. Or you can make the shift to predator consciousness, knowing that this path will make you dangerous to the status quo, uncomfortable to be around for some people, and ultimately wealthy beyond what you currently think is possible. The mindset shift isn't optional if you want extraordinary results. And once you make it, there's no going back to the comfortable mediocrity of victim thinking. The question isn't whether this approach works. The question is whether you're ready to become the kind of person who makes it work. Because the world doesn't need another person who knows what to do. The world needs more people who actually do what they know.